This is The Guardian.
Hello and welcome to The Guardian Football Weekly. 2 weeks to go until the Premier League season starts, and one of its recent greats says farewell. Son Heung-min plays his last game for Spurs in Seoul before heading off to LA. Feels like perfect timing, but certainly the end of an era, curling it in from either foot from the edge of the box, running past every Burnley player twice. The Alexander Isak story carries on. Eddie Howe says he knows nothing. Liverpool say they'll walk away, while Benjamin Sesko considers coming in to replace him. There's Callum Wilson to West Ham and Wolves signing Wolf. That is very good of them. No weeks to go until the starts of League One and League Two. A wonder free kick helps Cardiff to victory. A hapless own goal helps Luton to victory, while Plymouth lose at home to Barnsley. In League Two, there's Tannoy requests for a qualified ref in Shrewsbury, kamikaze keeping from Barnet, and Cambridge United make a mockery of the frauds at not the top 20 with a ruthless demolition of Cheltenham, brackets 1-0. Also today, Fitbar Corner returns as Celtic clinch the title. Marta, 70 years old, scores a banger for Brazil in the Women's Copa America. All that plus your questions, and that's today's Guardian Football Weekly. On the panel today, from Not the Top 20, Ali Maxwell, welcome.
Hello.
Barry Glendenning, welcome.
Hello.
And good morning to Dan Bardell.
Morning, Max.
Let's start then with Son Heung-min saying he'll leave Spurs after 10 years. He played his last game for the club in their 1-1 draw with Newcastle in Seoul yesterday. Joined from Bayer Leverkusen in 2015, scored 173 goals in 454 appearances. Got the Golden Boot joint in 21-22. His partnership with Harry Kane, the best in Premier League history, going by goals and assists set up for each other. Spurs all-time leading assist maker. Captained the Europa League victory in May. Sort of feels, Barry, like absolute perfect timing for this guy.
Yeah, I think it is perfect timing. You've run through his achievements there, just the bare numbers. You could probably add he's a brilliant ambassador for the club. He seemed to get on famously with all his teammates. They all loved him. The fans loved him. He was always very appreciative of them. Never caused an ounce of trouble that I can remember anyway. Occasionally the lip would hang down if things weren't going his way, but pretty minor stuff. And there's been a visible drop-off in his performances in the last season or two, particularly last season. He's not as quick as he used to be, not as decisive as he used to be. I'm sure the two are related. He has decided to leave before he's been pushed out the door, which I think is the best way for it to go. He still has plenty to offer a team that doesn't play in a league that's quite as energetic and frenetic. Looks like he's off to LAFC. So good luck to him. He's been a really important player for Spurs over 10 years. I know they've only won one trophy, but he and Harry Kane were sort of the public face of Spurs. And unlike Harry, I suppose he's won a trophy, so it could be argued he was slightly more important for them than Harry Kane, which is not to do Kane down, but yeah, it is the right time for him to go, I think.
You mentioned what a nice guy. There's that amazing footage of TNT when he's sort of done an interview and then he sort of shakes everyone's hands and then places the mic. No one has ever laid a microphone down more carefully than he does on the table in front of the pundits. I wonder, Dan, because he's been such a constant, trying to work out sort of where he fits in, your Premier League greats list. I wonder, because he's just always been there for this time, or because it's harder to judge legendary status when it's right there rather than 10 years ago or 20 years ago, if perhaps he's sort of better than we think he is.
Yeah, I think he's been a superb player over the 10 years. I think, if I remember correctly, he had a little bit of a difficult acclimatisation to the Premier League, but once he did acclimatise, he never really looked back. He was such a reliable finisher, a reliable source of goals, always a player that worked hard. He was a nice player to watch with his speed and his finesse and his trickery as well, Son. So I think when you're picking kind of Premier League legends, we're probably all guilty of, well, did they win the Premier League? Did they play for one of the top teams? But Tottenham, obviously, as we've said, didn't win very much and haven't won the Premier League. But they were a very, very good team when Son was kind of at the peak of his power. So whilst he probably wouldn't be getting into my all-time Premier League 11, I think to say after giving 10 years to one single team and the amount of goals he scored and the amount of moments he's given us, I think he must be in the realms of being a Premier League icon, and I think he's one of those players as well that kind of fans from every team like, and that's hard to do in the modern day, especially with social media. And like Baz says, if he goes to LAFC, I think it's quite funny because he'll go there and join a former teammate, Hugo Lloris. We just spoke about how nice he is. Hugo Lloris is the only person he's ever fell out with, and yet he's who he's going to link up with in his next club probably.
I'm sure they've forgiven each other. Yeah, you'd put him in the all-time great squad because good to have around the place, in a Jordan
good for the dressing room.
But also because he's probably the best ever both-footed goal scorer in the Premier League. I'm pretty sure the stats bear that out in terms of players who've scored a certain amount of goals, let's say 80 minimum, and then the percentage of those goals that they've scored with their weaker foot. And it's something that I'm weirdly obsessed with, the idea of both-footedness and why more players aren't that. Because, there's so many different aspects of technical skill, aren't there? But it strikes me that that's the one that basically opens up. It basically doubles your possibilities on the pitch, on the ball, particularly as an attacking player. Well, actually all over the pitch, wherever you play. If you're in more of a passing role, it opens up all the areas and angles that you can pass to. But from a goal scoring point of view, and from Son's role in particular, if you're facing up a defender and it doesn't matter which way you go, if they can't stop you getting a shot off and you're equally good at shooting with both feet, it's just incredibly potent. And that's what Son has shown over such a long period of time. And I still don't think there are that many contenders for anyone currently to match him. So that's the thing that, on a footballing level, I'll remember the most. As you say, Max, so many amazing goals, but almost two kind of, what would be the word? Almost two trademark goals, like go down the outside, left foot, hard and low across the keeper, or cut inside, right foot. He can do the curl into the far corner as well. An amazing goal scorer.
And I think, Max, when you talk about all his amazing goals, arguably his finest achievement in the Tottenham shirt was that miss against Manchester City, which more or less cost Arsenal the title.
It's a very good point. If it had been question time, Ali, I would have stood up and applauded you when you talked about the lack of two-footed players, because it just is sort of mind-blowing that you train all day and yet there are just so few players who are just equally adept. And you're right, because he could bend it in from 30 yards with both feet. That one where he does that step over, you know he's going to do the step over, but he still does it, and then he has space to take a shot with his left foot. Anyway, have fun in LA. He'll be missed. In the same game, James Maddison looked like he did the same knee he did last season. He looked really sad, and that is a real blow, especially they missed out on Morgan Gibbs-White as well. So in that 10 position, they have agreed to sign Joao Palhinha on a season's loan from Bayern Munich. Could make the deal permanent for £27 million. That, Dan, seems very sensible. Like, you feel like Palhinha, and he didn't have a brilliant time at Bayern. Obviously, their centre mid is pretty competitive, but he was brilliant for Fulham, Palhinha.
Yeah, probably a victim of circumstance at Bayern Munich, a managerial change and a manager that wants to play football in a different way to the one that signed him, and probably went a year too late to Bayern as well. I think he was supposed to go the season before to Bayern, and it didn't happen for whatever reason. But in Premier League terms for Fulham, when Fulham came up, he was a big reason why they were able to establish themselves so quickly in the Premier League and why they were never really in relegation trouble. And every time he wasn't on the pitch, they did struggle, and I thought they'd struggle without him, and actually they did okay. But I've been saying for a couple of seasons, I think Tottenham are crying out for like a genuine bona fide number 6, and he's just a brute, isn't he? He gets so many yellow cards, if I remember correctly, at Fulham. But he will sort them out. He will give them a bit of stability, and with a manager that probably is going to concentrate a little bit more on defensive stability, I think he'll be a really, really important player for them. And sometimes we look at teams signing players at 30 plus, and I think Joao Palhinha is 30 has been a problem. But I think a little bit of experience in there, a little bit of know-how for Tottenham, I think that will be a good thing, and I think that's a good signing.
Quite the understatement in a little bit more interested in defending compared to the previous manager. Let's talk about Alexander Isak then. Newcastle have rejected Liverpool's opening bid of 110 million. Newcastle want 150 apparently. Liverpool claim they're willing to walk away. Seems like Isak wants to walk away. He's been training with Real Sociedad after his thigh strain, which was a bit of a tell sign, isn't it, to go and just train with some...
To be perfectly accurate, Max, he's been training at Real Sociedad on his own.
Got it.
He hasn't been training with Real Sociedad.
Noted. It's still a bit of a sign, isn't it, if you go to another training ground to do your burpees or whatever. You've been really enjoying this. This is the kind of transfer drama, Barry, that really gets you going during the off-season.
Well, it's turned into the big saga of the summer, and Newcastle are having a disastrous window at the moment. They've been very publicly rejected by Matheus Cunha, James Trafford, Brian Mbeumo, João Pedro, Hugo Ekitike, Dean Hussein and Liam Delap. So that's not great.
Seemed like you were enjoying that list there, Barry.
I am. I'm not going to lie. But they have signed Anthony Elanga for 55 million. It seems to be general feeling that's too much for him. But if it works out, it'll be fine. That's not a problem. They don't have a director of football as things stand. And their fans are up in arms because, like Villa fans and Forest fans, I think to a lesser extent Everton fans, they're annoyed that they think the deck is stacked against them, and to a certain extent it is because of PSR. They're not allowed spend. Their owners have all the money in the world, but they're only allowed to spend what their club earns. So those are the rules. Now you could argue that their club aren't maximising all the streams of revenue available to them. You know, they don't have stadium naming rights deal. I think training ground, they don't have a sponsor for that, or kit and various other avenues of revenue that they're not exploiting. But anyway, so now Liverpool have come in for Isak, who is on, I believe, 125 or 150 grand a week, which is clearly a lot of money, but he could get a lot more elsewhere. They rejected Liverpool, what they feel was a low ball offer from Liverpool, and Liverpool have said they're prepared to walk away. But now, interestingly, David Ornstein, who works for The Athletic and doesn't get much wrong when he's talking about transfers, he's reporting that Al Hilal in Saudi Arabia have identified Darwin Núñez at Liverpool as a priority target. So Al Hilal are owned by the Saudi Public Investment Fund. Newcastle are owned by the Saudi Public Investment Fund. So if Al Hilal were to buy Darwin Núñez for Liverpool, that would give Liverpool extra money with which to bid more for Alexander Isak. I think Newcastle fans are starting to find out that being owned by the Saudi Public Investment Fund isn't as hiccup-free as they thought it would be. So I would be surprised if Liverpool walked away. I think they'll make another bid. Obviously, Newcastle are now seem to be in a battle with Manchester United to sign Benjamin Sesko, and if they end up losing out on Isak, or if they end up losing Isak and missing out on Sesko, it will have been an absolutely disastrous window for them. And this was supposed to be the one where they took a major step forward, and the manner in which Newcastle is being run, I think a lot of their fans are getting very concerned, annoyed, and it's a mess at the minute.
Dan, 24 hours ago on the radio, we were having a discussion about PSR, and the point that Newcastle and Villa, specifically because they have money they could invest but can't really spend it all. And Barry asked you, what would you have instead? And you weren't quite sure. I just wondered in the last 24 hours if you'd managed to work out what should happen. Like, should I mean, there will be fans of Villa, say, or Newcastle, who just say you should be able to spend everything you have and just chuck it all, put it all out there, which doesn't seem right. But I can totally sympathise why clubs slightly below the highest revenue generators get frustrated when you could go. I mean, Villa have done barely anything in this window.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to thank Barry again for asking me to solve PSR on the spot on a show I didn't even know I was coming on until half an hour before. That was really kind of you. I've still not got any major thoughts on what you can do now, but it almost feels like some teams are happy to just stand still and be in the Premier League year in, year out, and that is okay. That's those clubs' prerogative. That there'll be clubs that are quite happy to be in the Premier League every single season, no danger of going down and just being there and getting the money. Villa, Newcastle, Forest, I think now as well, they want to move up, they want to challenge the elite, but the way that the rules are, that they absolutely cannot do it now. I'm not saying Villa, for example, haven't spent money because we have, but the difference in when we've got owners that want to spend money and when Chelsea and City had owners that want to spend money, they were able to do it. They're able to build their brands, build their teams, and now their superpowers, that their revenue is reflected in how much money they were allowed to spend back in the day when they were taken over. We've never been able to get to that point. We've sold so many players, but the rules still don't allow us to compete. So I think if you've got wealthy owners that can prove their wealth, we have a fit and proper test for owners when they come into varying degrees of success. If an owner wants to invest more than the club earns, if they can prove they have those funds and it's not going to put the club in any disarray, and I don't know why there can't be some form of dispensation for that. That would be the only thing I'd say.
Ali, I thought it's interesting from as an EFL point of view, is that, the PSR laws, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's quite hard to have the same rules for a club in mid-table in League Two and the top of the Premier League when they're just entirely different beasts.
Yeah, they are very different beasts. I mean, the spending at the very top of the game does have an impact on the lower down the pyramid, and there are some who sort of think, well, just ignore the EFL when we're talking about Premier League spending, let them do what they want, and the EFL can kind of govern itself. And if the clubs want to achieve sustainability, then that's, they should be doing that off their own back. I mean, the difficulty is at that level is that the Premier League's money and wealth has attracted so many people to buying not just Championship clubs, although that was the initial wave, but now League One and League Two clubs, quite often with the stated aim of reaching the Premier League, which is not impossible, but might as well be at this point. And what they do is instantly raise the cost level of their club, and what that does is make that club entirely dependent on that owner, who may down the line, and it can be 5-10 years down the line, but it has happened quite a lot, not decide that they either can't or won't foot the bills anymore and leave that club in huge distress. But also it means that the average costs of League Two and League One are so much higher, the wage bills are so much higher because the teams challenging for it are just dragging everyone up with them, and even sort of sensible owners who don't have millions to spare are finding it really difficult to compete at all with like the median of the league that they're in. So that's how, the absurd spending at the top of the game impacts the game down at a lower level. I have no idea what to do with PSR, but I think Dan's points are pretty valid.
Like, another thing about the Saudi Public Investment Fund having so many fingers and so many different sporting pies is that, last season they chucked, what was it, 100 million at Villa for John Duran. Chelsea have won the Club World Cup, which is bankrolled by the Saudi Public Investment Fund. That's earned them 100 million. Villa and Chelsea, they're direct rivals of Newcastle. So I wonder what Newcastle fans think when they see this happening. And I think what's going to happen is Liverpool will eventually get Alexander Isak, and Newcastle will get 110 million and Harvey Elliott. And everyone can say, yes, we won.
We won the window. Yes. I didn't want to see the lovely welcome video for Aaron Ramsdale, who I think is a good signing for Newcastle. Sort of like an old Geordie granny sort of saying, how we're come down here, pet, and as long as you work hard, you'll be fine. And Aaron Ramsdale sort of watching the video, and he seems like a sweet guy, and it's just a nice bit of content.
He is a lovely guy. He's a bit of a Jonah, though, isn't he? He's been relegated 3 times with 3 different clubs.
Who was called the relegator? Roger Johnson. Roger Johnson was known as the relegator. What a moniker to have as a footballer. In Newcastle striker news, West Ham have agreed to sign Callum Wilson, who left Newcastle last season. I was very excited about Wilson and Ings until I learned that Ings left this summer. It is a pay-as-you-play deal for Callum Wilson, which I guess isn't so bad. If you're a West Ham fan, you're not going, oh, we've signed another. It's sort of like it's like a farm for animals, isn't it? He's gone off to the farm as Callum. Anyway, if he's good and he plays, he is good if he's fit, and so it could work out quite well.
West Ham are in serious trouble.
Yeah.
I think, look at the shape of their squad. They've lost a lot of experience, which I know people will say players come to the end of their contract, players that are in their 30s, but there's stability in the dressing room to consider. And when a lot of those players have moved on as well, the players that have been there for a long time, I look at that mishmash of players. I think they're in for a long, tough season, West Ham.
Yeah, which feels like one of the constants in life, doesn't it? I feel like West Ham should be in for a long, tough season. It feels right. I'd be nervous that Everton will have a great season and just we won't know what to do with ourselves. Wolves have signed a player called Wolf from AZ Alkmaar, which is excellent news. Could they get Ricky Van Wolfswinkel? Could they get Wolf from Gladiators? Could they have an entire front three of Wolf?
Didn't have a Wolf previously as well, John de Wolf.
Was John de Wolf? I don't know.
Back in the day, so I'm sure they had a centre-back called John de Wolf back in the day. Showing my age here. I'm sure they did.
Just quickly on Villa, how are your current vibes, Dan?
A bit bored of the transfer window because we're not really doing anything and it feels like everyone else is buying loads of players, but it is what it is. I think Villa will sign players. They're just being opportunistic. I think they've learnt from the January window where they were able to get Asensio and Rashford in and kind of get their season up and running, and went on a magnificent run and nearly got top 5 and went well in the Champions League and the FA Cup. I think because of the rules, they've just got to keep their powder dry for as long as possible. But they've probably got the feelers out for a few players, but Villa will do business, but it'll all be towards the end of the window. I think they'll start the season with the kind of the team they have now, which I'm okay with because it's a good team, and as long as Unai Emery's there, I've never really got any huge worries. The manager is the most important person at Aston Villa. The man is a genius, so Villa will never be too far away from the top 6 as long as he's at the helm. So I'm not massively worried. It would be nice to buy some players, but it is what it is.
Sound like one of those fans just happy to be in the Premier League. That's your prerogative. It's totally fine. All right, that'll do for part 1. Part 2, we'll do the beginning of the League 1 and League 2 season. Welcome to part 2 of the Guardian Football Weekly. Jordan writes, "Hi Max and Kai. I recently saw that the live shows are returning after a long-awaited break. Much to my delight, I instantly logged on to buy tickets for me and my girlfriend, who I have now converted into a Barry Glendenning fangirl, only to find that the show is on whilst I'm in Turkey. I'm devastated at this revelation. May I ask the team to move the show to suit my needs for any days, aside from the 5th or the 12th of September, or alternatively, I'll have to cancel the whole holiday. If not, adding another date would make my year. Thanks, Jordan." This is the only date. You could fly back for one night and then fly back again.
We could move the show to Istanbul or Bodrum or wherever it is.
Isn't it? Yeah. He could live stream the show to everyone at his resort. It'll have a big screen, won't it? You're all inclusive. That would be good. I don't know how big we are in Turkey. Anyway, Jordan can't make it and Mrs. Jordan can't. But you can. We're playing the Troxy. It's a 1,000,000-seater, so there probably are tickets still available. TheGuardian.com/Football Weekly. We are live streaming it, so everyone on earth can watch it and have a nice time. We'll announce the panel in the next few days, and you can find out all the details on the description page of the podcast, on our Instagram, our Blue Sky, or TikTok accounts. The AFL's begun, Ali.
Yes.
Oh, you must be excited. How did you feel League 1 and League 2 began?
Well, yeah, I felt very excited. It's a bit weird, the split start to the season, the Championship starting
I agree.
This weekend. That's not happened as long as I can remember. So it did feel a little bit odd. But I was very excited when Luton and Wimbledon kicked off on Friday night and we were served up an absolutely honking game of football.
Wasn't it terrible?
Which felt apt. Luton coming down, obviously, twice in a row from Premier League to League 1 now. Looked like a team that has a lot of very good defenders and midfielders, but still hasn't worked out what they're going to do at the top of the pitch. Wimbledon came up from League 2, having had the best defence in League 2, but with concerns over basically player quality and chance creation of their own, stepping up a level, and defended brilliantly and absolutely deserved a point, but couldn't really get close to Luton's goal, and conceded what was a comedy own goal right at the end for Luton to steal really a very undeserved 1-0 win, which I think had the neutrals pretty disappointed. So yeah, I mean, that was the start of the weekend, and then it was more entertaining on Saturday afternoon, particularly in League 1, which I think this year looks genuinely quite exciting from a neutral standpoint. Birmingham getting 111 points last season was absolutely incredible, but it meant that from a competitive standpoint, the league never really got going hugely. And I think this year it looks pretty open. So yeah, it was a good start.
I like that own goal, just the fact that it looped. It took like 20 minutes to go in and everybody knew. And you could just be like, oh, those Wimbledon players so late on going, you're not serious, are you? Yes, and like the teams that went down, the other teams that went down, Cardiff came from behind to beat Peterborough, didn't they? And that free kick was, if you haven't seen it, Ruben Colwill, it is Like it's it is, and I don't like the phrase knuckleball, even though that's what it is, but it is the ultimate knuckleball, isn't it?
It is, yeah. The way that he strikes the ball, almost sort of cutting across it, like you're trying to sort of slice a golf ball on purpose, is very, very hard and very unusual. And it seemed crazy that it went so powerfully and straight via many, many wobbles into the top corner. It was incredible. And because it was quite far out wide as well, so the keeper was probably expecting a cross. It was just absolute perfection and pretty apt as well. Colwill, I'll just quickly say, is one of my favourite young players in the EFL. Someone who, although he's probably now 23, which these days isn't considered that young, hilariously, he's an attacking midfielder who is 6'4", 6'5", but has, the close control of some of the best at EFL level. Has been one of those young players that's not quite become a superstar, and everyone's been waiting for it for 3 or 4 seasons. But Cardiff themselves have just been quite a poor team at Championship level with a lot of different managers, and now they've got a manager in Barry Murphy, who's just been working at Man City for the last 3 or 4 years with Cole Palmer and others under his tutelage in their sort of PL2 team. And I mean, it all lines up pretty well, I think, for Colwill to suddenly become, easily should be the best player at League One level if he can hit his straps, and starting with a 30-yard free kick while wearing the armband for your boyhood club, with your brother playing in midfield next to you, who's even younger, was a pretty cool way for Cardiff to start the season.
Yeah. Anything to catch your eye in League One, Baz?
I'm interested to see how Huddersfield get on this season. They've spent a lot of money. They brought in Alfie May for 1.3 million, I think, which is obviously a lot of money for that level. They got off to a good start against Leyton Orient, 3-0 win. Alfie May scored a penalty, so he's off the mark. Plymouth Argyle, I've kind of a soft spot for, because James Dart, one of our editors, is a fan. We occasionally go to Plymouth games when they're in London. I'm always amazed at how many fans Plymouth can bring to London for a school night game. Tom Cleverley's in charge of them now. Didn't get off to a very good start. They lost 3-1 at home to Barnsley. It was quite a fractious game. Cleverley got booked. There was a bit of a melee at one point near half-time, I think. But yeah, Plymouth were 2-0 down, got back into it, and looked like they were going to rescue a point. And then Barnsley, who are managed by Conor Hourihan, who's ex-Villa, isn't he?
Yeah, ex-Villa. And Plymouth, in fact.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Conor Hourihan's in charge of Barnsley, so they won that game. And then, Bradford back in League One. They beat Wycombe Wanderers in front of a crowd of, I think, just over 20,000.
Yeah, there was one amazing save in that Bradford Wycombe game as well, which is worth digging out if you have a lot of time on your hands. And look, a good win for Stockport over Bolton. Ali, in a sort of that was a playoff 6-pointer already, wasn't it?
Yeah, it did feel like that, and it was an entertaining game. I think, I don't know about you guys, I don't know how often this happens in the Premier League, but in the EFL, like the dream for me watching a live game as a neutral is when you instantly get the sense that both teams are trying to win rather than one team sort of sitting back and trying to hit on the counter, maybe happy with a point. It feels like at the top of the game, you get quite a lot of games where it's very clear who the team that should dominate is, and that's the kind of pattern of the game. Albeit the games between the very top teams are always absolute carnage at the moment. And yeah, this was the sort of League One version of that, where both teams came with real attacking intent. Bolton looked the better side, and Stockport went in 1-0 up at half time. Their manager said we would have been lucky to be level, and instead we were ahead and we didn't deserve it. And I think it reflects to me that Stockport have moved up the food chain so quickly from the National League to a League One promotion contender. And their manager, Dave Challoner, is so impressive with how he manages everything. But I think the way that he spoke about the game, where they'd just beaten Bolton 2-0, Bolton, one of the biggest teams at the level, also a promotion contender. And, he was doing that thing where he was like, we didn't even play very well, pretty disappointed with the performance. We can get so much better than that. And I always think for opening day, that's quite a cool thing to do, I reckon. Win 2-0 and be like, a bit disappointed actually, guys. So Bolton fans were furious with that.
Now, Ali, let's get down to the serious business. Do you want to apologise now for putting Cambridge United 18th in League Two after our demolition of Cheltenham in the game of the day at the Abbey Stadium? I watched it. I confess I was on a nap walk when the goal went in. Louis Appere, who I wrote a column about, he scored a goal. So I'm going to write 20 more columns about him, see if they can all get past the sports editor. I've done another Louis Appere column. But a great win for the mighty U's, Ali. Presumably your headline from League Two.
Yeah, I suppose, given that we had Cheltenham finishing second bottom.
Oh, okay.
On paper, the 18th place...
a 6-pointer, a relegation 6-pointer.
Yeah, but also kind of the 18th place team winning 1-0 at home to the 23rd place team feels about par, I'd say. That's almost exactly what I expected. And the fact that it was a sort of tap in from a rebounded shot and you kind of huffed and puffed and struggled to blow the door down otherwise. I think it was basically exactly, you didn't learn anything that didn't already know here. No, we love Appere on the pod, mainly because on his Wikipedia page, his name is Louis George P. Appere, just the initial P.
Good.
Which throws up all sorts of mystery, but also because he's a kind of French-Scottish striker with a terrible...
He actually looked quite good. What was it? A terrible goal-scoring
record. But works very hard for the team, brings others into play. Like, you know, I'm on a bit of a mission on our pod to try and change the way that people think and talk about strikers, because we're still in an era where people want a 20-goal-a-season striker. And in the EFL last season, across 72 teams, only 2 players scored more than 20 goals.
Wow.
And only one of them hit 20 goals without any penalties. So, like, in the modern game, and it's dripped down from the Premier League, like, there aren't very many pure goal scorers, and the ones that are tend not to play very much because they don't do very much else. Because if they were good at goal scoring and they were really quick and really strong and really good at bringing others into play, they play for Premier League teams. So someone like Appere, I don't think he will score 20 goals for you, but I think he might help Ben Knight, for example, or Sully Kai score 10 goals each. And then in the aggregate, Max, you've got a great attack.
But actually what's interesting, I think, and this is the point, I didn't really write about Louis Appere. I'd never heard of the guy, you know, came into a video going, we've signed this striker, but didn't actually give his name. And I was like, this is a lot of presumed knowledge. It's just a man in jeans kicking a ball. Could be anyone. I could have found him on the street. It's the point, it's the sort of, and you must find this frustrating, the way you view footballers at this level is these are shite. And these guys are unbelievable footballers, right? They are just so, when you think about how competitive it is, and we talk about the number of players that actually make it from academy level and whatever, you mentioned Ben Knight, who actually played for City under Pep and, made his debut in the Community Shield. Like, it is interesting that you watch these players who are simultaneously living the dream because they're being paid to play football, but they were the best at some point in their life. They were the absolute best at this. And now they're sort of trying to come to terms with the fact that this is their life. And sometimes you'll just basically, if you're a centre forward in League Two, a lot of it is just shuttle runs. It's like, twice a week you do 90 minutes of shuttle runs and you might get 2 chances. And this is the dream, but it's an odd dream,
For sure. And that's why I think I haven't done this scientifically and run the numbers, but that's why it certainly feels to me anecdotally like most League One and League Two strikers that start games consistently and are considered first choice, many of them will have come up from non-league rather than dripped down from Premier League academies. And I think a large part of it is that mental side of the game, is the harsh realities, if you like, albeit it's a bit of a cliche, of League Two football, of shuttle runs and of being that sort of player that Neil Harris wants, rather than someone who is really, really strong technically but has never wrestled with Michael Morrison for 90 minutes. It's really, really interesting. And that's where the English game has a bit of an issue. Would I call it that? I think probably. I think it will rear its head more and more over the next 5 years. Of the PL2 academies have so many players at any given time between the age of 17 and 20, and there aren't enough spots for them to drop down into the EFL because the record of PL2 players dropping down isn't that good. And EFL clubs for the last 5 years have been going, well, surely if we can get the guy released by Brighton, well, he'll certainly be good enough for us in League One. But the hit rate isn't that good because I think it is such a culture shock. And also because these guys are generally on, like, some of them are on 10, 20 grand a week, even nowhere near first team football. So then trying to play first team football for a League Two club on 2 grand a week or 3 grand a week, there's this huge disconnect at the moment. And I think there's going to be a generation of players currently in their kind of early 20s who might find it really, really, really tough, but who are currently on unbelievable contracts, living an unbelievable life without getting anywhere close to playing first-team professional football.
Yeah, that's interesting. So there'll just be this sort of amazing set of technically brilliant footballers that have to just go and be street football. They'll all become.
They'll be playing in the Baller League.
Yeah, no, you're probably right. Some classic League Two. Barnett's new keeper getting caught dribbling out, and his manager throwing him under the bus after the game. Shrewsbury Bromley, the ref got injured, so the fourth official went to refs. So over the tannoy, they said, "Is there a qualified referee?" Which is a very low stakes. Is there a doctor, or even lower stakes than is there a pilot on this plane? Isn't it? We need somebody who knows the laws of football, and obviously everyone in the crowd thinks they know the laws, but they actually don't. Just the latest on Sheffield Wednesday. EFL's increasingly concerned about Wednesday's financial situation, their ability to fulfil their opening championship fixture. They've got a senior squad of 14 players, more set to leave. I mean, it feels, Ali, like we're sort of barreling towards collapse. I mean, the one silver lining, is Barry Bannon committing to the club. You sort of feel what a hero this guy is. He's the string quartet on the Titanic. But it's incredibly nervous times for them, isn't it? Yeah,
absolutely. I haven't seen any major updates post-weekend yet, but the Wednesday fans were given, as you say, kind of a rare moment of joy and of feeling like they matter for the first time in a long time, because Bannon signed a new contract. I'm absolutely sure he could have got a contract with another championship club, but he's been there for a long time, and this level of loyalty, or this show of loyalty, if you like, because I'm still a bit confused as to how he's got a contract, how the club are purporting to promise that they can pay him, given how many issues they have had and are still apparently having with paying players in full and on time. But for Bannon, it's not like he doesn't understand the situation, so he obviously feels it was still worth it for him. And I think for fans, you want to see any signs of loyalty that can in any way reflect the loyalty that you show for your club. And these are increasingly hard to find from players, from managers, certainly from those who run your clubs. And so for them to have seen Bannon re-sign, just an amazing thing over the weekend. And I'm not someone that has a lot of hope when it comes to owners like the Sheffield Wednesday owner. They don't necessarily seem to operate with the same sort of logic or desires that we all have to sort things out pretty quickly, and so I'm very, very concerned. And obviously the season starts for Wednesday this weekend, so I think a lot will probably happen over the next week or so.
The Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy's called for the immediate sale of Morecambe to avoid a, quote, heartbreaking closure. In an open letter to Jason Whittingham on Friday, she said, "I'm writing to you to express my deep concern at the serious and worsening situation at Morecambe Football Club. The uncertainty and misery now facing this proud club, its fans, players, staff and the local community is heartbreaking to see." Tomorrow we're doing a Future of Football finance special with Philippe and Kieran Maguire. So we'll cover all of football's existential crises, which will include these, of course. And that'll do for part 2. Part 3, I'll begin with Fitbar Corner. Welcome to part 3 of the Guardian Football Weekly, to Fitbar Corner, Barry. And a welcome return to the Scottish Premiership, and a welcome return to Russell Martin, to top line management. And he was in a big old mood, wasn't he, Baz?
Yeah, Rangers got their campaign off to a start on Saturday, and they drew away at Motherwell. Now, it would be fair to say that Rangers fans were not unanimous in their approval of the announcement that Russell Martin would be taking over their club. He got through Champions League second round qualifier against Panathinaikos. Lucky to do so, I would say. Certainly haven't seen the second leg of that. I think they were very lucky. But they got through, that's the main thing. So you got the feeling that will buy Russell some time, and it seems to have bought him 3 days. So they go to Motherwell, they're ahead, they draw. I watched some of this game, and Rangers were spookily reminiscent of Martin's Southampton. A lot of possession, but with very little intent or purpose. Kept playing the ball out from the back and then losing it on the edge of the final third. And you're going, oh, this is all very Southampton last season. But after the game, they got a draw. It's not the end of the world. But after the game, Martin took an absolute flamethrower to his players. He praised Cyril Dessers and Lyle Cameron, And his praise for them was interpreted as a dig at the two players they replaced on the hour mark, Danilo and Mo Diamande. But yeah, he spoke about players needing to, shelve their egos, talked about them just jogging about with little or no purpose, and was scathing in his attack, which seems, nothing he said was untrue, but go through them so publicly after just one league game. It's a dangerous game. But we'll see how that works out for Russell.
It's hard to know where to go after that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's a big card to play.
And the thing, what struck me about his I'm going to say rant, but in inverted commas, because it wasn't a rant. It was very eloquent, very measured. He never raised his voice, so it wasn't that he just lost his temper and was mouthing off in the heat of the moment. It was a very, very eloquent coruscation of his team. And then Celtic, they started their campaign yesterday. They beat St Mirren 1-0 with a late goal from Luke McCowan. Not a particularly impressive performance from them either. And I think Celtic fans are very concerned about the state of their team as well, because on the face of it, their squad looks conspicuously weak compared to last season's. They've lost Nicholas Kuhn, who's gone to Como. Jota is out long term with an injury, and they haven't replaced Kyogo Furuhashi, who left last January. Adam Ida is their main striker, and the consensus at Celtic Park seems to be that he's not good enough to be their main striker. They need a couple of wingers. Kieran Tierney started for them yesterday, played well, but of course went off injured, because that's what Kieran Tierney does, plays well, then goes off injured. Don't know how serious that is. The Celtic board are sitting on loads of money. They've plenty of money to spend, but seem very reluctant to do so, and it looks like Brendan Rodgers might be starting to lose patience with them as well. His contract expires in the summer, and as things stand, I don't think anyone's expecting him to stay on or sign an extension. Best of the rest are probably it'll be between Hearts, Hibs and Aberdeen. I guess Hearts have this new investment from Tony Bloom, the Brighton owner, and they're using his analytics model, Jamestown Analytics. So it'll be interesting to see how things go for them this season. Hibs under David Gray only lost, I think they were bottom of the table in December, and they only lost 2 of their final 20 games last season and ended up finishing 3rd. So can they kick on? I say best of the rest. I think there's a chance Rangers might not finish 2nd or indeed 1st. So there could be a vacancy in 2nd place for Hearts, Hibs or Aberdeen if any of them step up. And the 2 promoted sides are Livingston and Falkirk. They're expected to struggle, but I do note that Dundee are favourites to go down at the moment, were favourites before a ball was kicked. So that is feedback at the minute.
Many thanks, Barry. Now, Dan, I don't know how closely you've been covering the Women's Copa America, or if you decided to have 1 week off watching football. But I did you watch it? I put in the group Marta's equalising goal. I thought she was older than 39, but apparently only 39, Marta. But Colombia 4, Brazil 4. And Brazil won on penalties. But in the 6th minute of injury time, Colombia were 3-2 up. And Marta, Dan, scores just an absolutely brilliant goal.
Yeah, when Max Rushden texts, we're all alert.
Yeah, good.
I saw that come in, and I promptly clicked the link that you sent me. What's a strike?
What a goal!
Roberto Carlos-esque. Wasn't it the power in that drive and the pressure in that moment to basically save your country? It was an incredible strike and an incredible moment. And I'm not massive of people talking about 39 like it's old, because that's how old I am. But yeah, a legend of the game.
Yeah, it's an amazing, and it's a classic half volley, and it goes
clean.
in.
It's clean.
Looks like, when you see goals from South America and from the 80s. Big box score. They're all like this. It just absolutely just hammers it home. It's such a brilliant, brilliant goal. So well done to Brazil.
I've got a recommendation which is linked to this. doom scrolling yesterday, which normally doesn't chuck up the goods that I'm after, I managed to come across someone had tweeted a compilation of Fenomeno Ronaldo when he was playing for Corinthians when he was very old and very visibly overweight and still absolutely incredible. And I would guess if you were to search on X Ronaldo Corinthians, you would see the same compilation that I did and probably get the same level of endorphins that I did. So yeah, would recommend if we're talking about legendary Brazilian attackers.
Speaking of good videos on X, Indranil says, who of the victorious under-21 men's football team will be a breakout star in the Premier League? Ali, you follow the under-21s closely. There is an amazing video of you in the stands. We weren't sure if you wanted to talk about it or not because you didn't reply to the tweet, but it's at full time and you do some proper football fan. Yeah, fuck off, we've won. I absolutely loved it.
That could have been anyone. And the fact that that person was wearing a Not the Top 20 branded cap, again, which have sold in their ones, could have been absolutely anyone. Yeah, no, I did go to Bratislava along with a lookalike, clearly, and saw us beat the Dutch in the semi-final, which I absolutely loved. As you could see, I love covering the under-21s. That was the third of the last four, I think, or maybe the fourth of the last five that I've been out to watch. It's always great fun, and the team under Lee Carsley are so much more fun than the team under Adi Boothroyd that I had to watch for a couple of tournaments beforehand.
You surprise me.
Yeah, he's honestly, I absolutely love Lee Carsley. He's an incredible bloke and coach, and that team, did the business. In terms of stars, gosh, I mean, Elliot Anderson was absolutely unbelievable all tournament. Harvey Elliott obviously was very, very good. And, I feel like if you've played 150 games for Liverpool and you're 23, you possibly shouldn't be allowed to play in the under-21s Euros, but we benefited from that. Ethan Waneri had a few flashes off the bench, but didn't impact things that much. I think Livramento is exceptional and he was playing. So, yeah, I mean, we're in very, very good hands in the main. And although James Trafford didn't play, he was still eligible for the under-21s, and I'm really fascinated to see A, whether he'll be starting for Man City, and if so, when, and B, how will that look? Because clearly last time at Premier League level he struggled in a Burnley side that gave him a lot of shots to face, but playing for Burnley last season in the Championship, he put together the best goalkeeping season I've ever seen, certainly at second tier level. So I'm really intrigued to see how Trafford goes. I'm really pleased because when he moved to Burnley, a lot of people were questioning the transfer fee and it's been completely justified. And interested from an England pod point of view, at what point he properly starts to challenge Pickford for the gloves, because my assumption is that Pickford will remain England's number one until after the World Cup next summer. But if Trafford is starting for Man City, does that put more pressure on Pickford, given that Tuchel is obsessed with players playing at the highest level possible, and you can't play much higher than being City's number one?
We did receive an amazing email from Sholto. We were talking about getting in people doing their PhDs and academic correspondence. We can't read it out because it's so long. It's one of those emails that Barry would start rolling his eyes and saying, "This is the end of the podcast. You can't read this out." It's quite densely academic, 2,000 words long. But it argues the case for listening to Football Weekly while working on your PhD. Maybe I'll record it, and then one of those audio long reads, we can just read it out. The summary is the hypothesis: a higher XFW, expected Football Weekly, correlates with a higher probability in thesis completion and more impactful ideas. There's reams and reams of acknowledgements, and there's like a glossary and an index. And thank you so much for putting all that work in.
Does rather prove my assumption that PhDs are a lot of work goes into them and nobody reads them.
If you want the full thing,
this is very much a case in point.
If you want the full thing, email footballweekly@theguardian.com and we will reply with it, and or just wait for it to appear in several peer-reviewed journals, or maybe Barry can read it out for the halftime show Or maybe as people walk out of the Troxy in September.
Max, I feel like if Sholto wants a distraction from completing a degree, surely you would recommend a copy of Championship Manager 97, 98.
I'd go Championship Manager 90. Never better than Championship Manager 93. S. Claridge races clear.
Wow.
He slides it past the keeper, but somehow misses. James says, Dear Max, Barry and podcast crew, I'm one of those terrible people who work in advertising. I recently included a short clip of Max's unbelievable parallel park in a meeting about great social media content. Ever since, I've been asked repeatedly to make sure our client presentation includes the parallel park guy. I guess no one I work with watched the Soccer M glory years, while others have had to figure out what's our version of the parallel park. Whenever we get to that slide, I take great pleasure in leaving a 10-second GIF of Max's parallel park on the big meeting room screen for as much time as possible, constantly rotating between your gleeful face and the immaculately parked Subaru. No one believes you actually parked it. I promise I did. All the best, James. Thank you, James. I very much enjoyed that. Glad to see the cut through is happening. That's the thing. I don't know how do I benefit from this great social media content? That's it. That's the benefit. Is that you get no material benefit. You just, it's the glow of knowing that people loved your parallel park. It's a great park, honestly. I was on cloud 9 for a long time. Now, look, we're doing a Football Finance Future Football special tomorrow. So if you have questions about dodgy sponsors or the fate of football or the lower leagues or the Premier League or parachute payments or all that stuff, Football Weekly at theguardian.com or on Instagram, Blue Sky, in the Spotify comments where Joel says you can also be nice about the podcast if you like. I haven't read the Spotify comments. That sounds fun. Could make a song out of them. Anyway, that'll do for today. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Ali.
Cheers, Max.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Cheers, Baz.
Thank you.
Football Weekly is produced by Joel Grove. Our executive producer is Danielle Stevens. We'll be back tomorrow.
This is The Guardian.